Damn kids with their YouTubes and their avocado toast.
Okay, Boomer.
You kids don't know how good you have it.
Okay, Boomer. Hey, Dad, what's the Wi-Fi password? I need to know the Wi-Fi password.
Okay, Zoomer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another thrilling episode of Okay Boomer, Okay Zoomer. I am your host, Ghantt Chart, and today with me is my Daddysquatch.
Thank you.
You know, my father, who... So, today, I figured we would talk about, how, it's the month of February, and how we often talk about love and all the different things associated with it, how we have to do things, for that sort of thing. And of course, as part of the month of love, you have to make money to get those things, and obviously, we are a part of the capitalist system to make the things. Yep, gotcha, suckers. I am going to talk to you guys about our first jobs, Yeah, we're not talking about the lovey-dovey stuff. So today we're going to talk about the first jobs that we've had, because things have changed over the years, Jobs have changed from, one person to another, and obviously, things have differed. Obviously, back in the day, it isn't like, when kids would be working in the coal mines or things like that. Things change from, generation to generation. Like my father, Daddysquatch, who told me about how he was working how he was working as a Minuteman, how he'd be charging through the streets, shouting about how the British are coming, the British are coming. He constantly got to meet Paul Revere, true fact.
Well, I don't think it was a true fact, but yes, my first job was working at a gas station. So the gas station I worked at was Union 76. And they had your uniforms, and they referred to the people that would pump the gas or work the service station as, quote, Minutemen. But gas stations back then were very different from what today. We're most more convenience stores versus back then.
Yeah.
They were all mainly service stations, which means when you went there, all they did was they pumped gas. They would have a shop that they would fix on cars. They would change tires or something like that. And also that... they would have vending machines inside, so you could get a candy bar, you could get a package of cigarettes or soda, and then the bathrooms. But mainly, it was just to get gas for the vehicle. So, Oregon, very different from the rest of the United States, had full serve stations, which is you can't pump your own gas. So you had people there to pump your gas. So, my first job.
Yeah,
What's it?
Yeah, thanks capitalism, thank you America, working the American dream of pumping gas, So obviously gas, it would be different back in the day, like you were talking about the vending machines, it's not like, today where it's like you go into a convenience store, you get your Twinkies, you got like a whole room lined full of beer. It's that sort of thing. It's like there's more vending machines kind of thing. You were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it was one machine that had candy bars. That was it. Then you had one machine that had cigarettes. Yeah. Then you had one machine that had soda, and that was it.
Yeah, I'm more shocked that, hearing about the fact that there were places where you could, buy cigarettes, because like nowadays they have that behind the glass kind of thing.
Right, back then, you could sit there and you could they had vending machines for cigarettes. Anybody could buy them. It wasn't regulated. You could be 10 years old and buy a pack of cigarettes from the machine. And I think that's why they clamped down on it.
Yeah, wasn't there like a scene in like Stand By Me where the kids are like obviously 10 years old, they're playing cards and they're smoking cigarettes or something like that?
Oh yeah. If you ever watch, what was it, Back to the Future, there's a scene when Marty goes back in time to the city he was living in, and then you could see him looking around there, and then they have like that gas station where a car would come up and the guys would come out, they'd pump the gas, they'd clean the windshield, they'd check the tires. And that's basically what we did is, as soon as a car came in...
Did you have to clean...
What's that?
Did you have to clean any cars, that were filled with manure?
No, but There's nothing that drove me more crazy than you're cleaning a windshield. It's got bugs all over it, and you're scraping it. And somebody on the inside would sit there and take their finger. They'd scratch from the inside, trying to help you clean off the bug on the outside. It's like, it's on the outside. You want to get your butt out here and help me clean? But stop doing that. It happened more times than you'd believe. But the expectation
So
was
obvious.
that if you get a full tank of gas, you got clean windshield, oil checked, and air and all the tires checked.
Yes, capitalism, baby. Nowadays, things are different. Like, you got to do that stuff by yourself. Yeah, there are places where you can like clean the windshields, but things have obviously changed, significantly.
I'll tell you what, though, if you think about it, every gas station that you went to had a crew of probably about 10 kids working there pumping gas. Well, guess what? It did employ a lot of people.
That's fair. That's fair. Like, kind of reminds me of like, what was it? How back in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, how people were, protesting steam engines that were in textile mills because people who would knit socks, they felt like that their jobs were being threatened, So it's like, new technology, that, makes certain jobs outdated, that kind of thing.
True. But, that's how it keeps going. It's just like when they converted from horse-drawn carriages to automobiles, the people in the horse-drawn carriage and the bridal shops and all that stuff go, oh, our jobs are going away. Well, the jobs went to the factories that made the cars.
They took our gerbs! I had to make that. So, I thought that, sort of like an opening salvo to this, that we would talk about like kooky work stories that we've had from our first job.
Wait, Ghantt Chart. You gotta tell us about your first job.
Okay, so my first job, I worked at Culver's, or I basically worked at, wait, am I allowed to say that? Or,
Sure.
Yeah, I worked at a burger restaurant, called Culver's, and, I basically think of it as, like, the rich man's McDonald's, because, like, compared to McDonald's, it's at least higher quality food, higher quality beef, all that sorts of things. The staff is friendlier, that kind of thing, They go that extra mile to make the burgers good, and so my first job was at Culver's, and I would typically, I would work at, like, the basic duties. I would do, like, the cleaning up duties. I would work a lot at the register. It wasn't in the back area, cleaning up
You weren't flipping
making
burgers.
The burgers
You weren't flipping burgers.
I was not flipping burgers. I was up at the register, taking orders. I think the most that I've done with food was that I would make ice cream most of the time, or no. That's heresy in the Culver's world. We made custard dishes.
Ooh.
We made, which, it's like, oh, but we don't make ice cream. We make custard because custard, our frozen custard, it doesn't, chill the tongue. You can enjoy the ice cream or the custard because it's at this precise temperature, that kind of thing.
Blah, blah, blah.
And, yeah. It's like, oh, but there's a science behind it, that sort of thing. So, yeah, we worked at, I worked more at the register kind of thing, which, according to Daddysquatch, you would tell me, it's like, man, I would have killed for a job back then, like that, where it's like nowadays it's kind of like seen as like well, I don't really want to say that, like, I feel like people kind of like treat retail workers nowadays kind of like trash, but I imagine there was more reverence to that position, you know what I mean?
Well, it's just that,
Like,
again, it was a little harder to get jobs back in the day, mainly because of, just the economy was not very good. I remember when I was working at that age, it was back in the late 70s, early 80s, and the United States is still in a real bad recession. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. So,
oh, we're getting political.
Oh no, it just did. That was the thing. You got cold, just throw a sweater on. Gas lines and everything. It was tough to get a job back then. So, any kind of a job you could work at, whether it was, and we didn't have quite the fast food places that everybody recognized today. So the town I grew up in, they had like they called it Arctic Circle or Dairy Queen. That's where if you wanted to get a burger you would go to, but typically there was no McDonald's, there was no other fast food places. So I think in the town we only had two, which you'd still consider chain stores, but I wouldn't say fast food. But one was Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the other was Shakey's Pizza. I wish that chain had not died. Very good pizza.
So yeah, like I remember you would say back in the day, it's like, you should be grateful that we're going to McDonald's, like there weren't as many McDonald's as, back in the day. Like I think you said that a town becomes a city when it gets its first McDonald's.
That's right. I think the closest
nowadays
McDonald's that was to us was like 100 miles away at the big city, and occasionally, like once every 3 or 4 months, my parents would take us all down to the big city because they had to hit some of the bigger stores, and they would take us to McDonald's, and it was such a treat to get a little burger, a little fries, but my dad never gave us soda. He'd always give us a milkshake, and I'm like, isn't soda cheaper? But he'd always make sure we had milkshakes, which is like, that's all right.
Well, I mean, I would take the milkshake. I would take the ice cream.
Well, I know you're.
I'm that kind of person.
I know you are that kind of person.
Yeah. I mean, like
Here.
I remember you would tell me, like you told me one story about like how you and your friends, went to a McDonald's one time. Like you were part of a group. You heard about this club, and that you were treating them. That this club, treated you guys to McDonald's. Do you mind telling that story, or is it kind of because it has a surprise plot twist ending, but I don't know if.
Well, I've told you a lot.
Daddysquatch,
Why don't you go ahead and say it? Tell me the story, because I've told you a lot of stories.
Okay, so this story was that you were introduced to like this group that you told me was, they were very friendly, they were very nice, and they decided to like take you guys out for some McDonald's, and you're like, oh man, this is really nice. So they take you to this area which had all these nice looking, sports arenas and stuff like that. It had all this cool stuff. And I think what you and your other friend, like there were 3 of you, you and one of your friends decided to go kind of like mess around, but then you're just like, wait, where is everybody? And then, the place is all dead quiet. You go back and you find out.
Yeah, that was.
Oh yes,
That was not a sports arena. It was basically they wanted to take us to take a look at this new place. It was part of a school activity at the time, and it was interesting. But we won't get into too much details they're about the thing. But basically, they took 3 of us, and they were gonna have us be the first ones because they wanted to turn this place into kind of like a summer camp for the school and stuff. And we get in there, and it's beautiful, huge mansion and stuff. But we stopped at McDonald's on the way there, and we thought, well, this is living, we get to go to McDonald's, and we went to this mansion, and it's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful part of the forest. I loved being out in the forest, so we went looking through there, and I basically wandered off from the group, and I was exploring. I was looking at the thing, and when I came back, the group was gone. I went back into that mansion, and nobody was around and stuff. And about 2 hours later, everybody showed up, and they were kind of mad at me for disappearing, but my 2 friends were never the same. What they were doing was, the weird twist is it was a cult, and those 2 had been brainwashed, and because of my running off in the woods, ta-da, I didn't get brainwashed.
Yeah, you didn't drink the Kool-Aid.
That Kool-Aid, I'm sure I had other Kool-Aids in life.
I mean, I'm surprised that you were, that you didn't have like when was this?
Oh, this is like years ago.
Well, I mean, like, what decade? Because, like, I'm trying to think, like, wasn't Jonestown kind of like a big news story during that time?
Yeah, it probably been,
or like,
it'd been late 70s or mid 70s. So yeah, about the same time as Jonestown. It wasn't Jonestown.
Yeah.
But, Those two?
Well, yeah, obviously not, but like, it's just like I would imagine, like, your parents would be like, don't, join any suspicious organizations, that kind of thing. Like the people of America were a bit leery at the time, or a bit weary, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think we're diverging from the topic of jobs. So let's go back to jobs.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that. So I've mentioned earlier that, like obviously we would talk with about, Culver's and things like that, or working at the 76 gas station. But I think one of the things about, having your first job is that you have stories. You have stories that just stick with you. Stories that will forever just kind of like stay with you, as part of like the growing experience. Sometimes you'll have good events, sometimes you'll have bad events. So I figured, we would tell some work stories. So, we go back and forth. So, Daddysquatch, floor's on you.
Well, do we have to do it on our first job, or can we do it on any job we've been on?
Any job.
Oh, any job. Okay, well, one of my jobs I've done later in my career was worked for a company that supported a lot of parts that went into the Tesla, so the Model S out in Fremont, California. And they were having problems with the parts that our company manufactured for them, so I volunteered on a short-term basis to basically be on site at Tesla to find out the issues right there and then to fix them or communicate them to our company. But I was in their area inspecting parts, and what is very frequent in California? Earthquakes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, like, what is frequent in California? It's like a bunch of things are frequent in California. Unemployment, depression, taxes.
Well, this was an earthquake, and I've never have been in an earthquake before. So immediately, it was the weirdest feeling. You could see things shaking around, and I ran out of the building. I was outside, and finally it stopped shaking and everything. And of course, I walked back in. Everybody had stayed in the building, and they're saying, "Where'd you go?" And I said, "It was an earthquake. I went outside." They said, "Oh, that's just a little one." They're all laughing at me because, "Oh, it was only like a 4.5. We get those all the time." I was like, "Oh, I don't like this."
So it's kind of like that. I remember there was this video from another YouTuber called Habitual Line Crosser where he does like faces for like different states and different planes and stuff like that. There's a video where California and Texas, or not, California and Florida are having a conversation. And California's like, "Man, I'm kind of freaking out because there's a hurricane coming in." And Florida's just like, "Well, what what scale is it?" And it's like, "Well, I think it's like a ranking 2." And then Florida's just laughing. It's like, "I think you'll be fine. Just, you got some mountains. Go up to the mountains, party, have some beer."
Oh, is that where the states have a little face on them and they talk back and forth?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I always get.
But yeah, obviously it would be a freaky event, to experience something like that. We've all have like those freaky events within your jobs, Everyone's had that weird moment where you're just like, what the heck is going on? Case in point, back to my job at Culver. So I'll tell a work-related story. So I had a man, like I was working late at night, because Culver's stays open until 10 p.m. They probably changed their hours, but I remember working, like 9-ish, most of the people are gone. So, it's just me, a few workers, maybe a couple customers in the dining room, getting some food. But I remember this guy, who was wearing a black coat, basically was, still deciding on some things. And sometimes, when business is slow, sometimes you make small talk with the customers, because we want to be like a, friendly, family friendly kind of thing. And this conversation that I had, will stick with me in the back of my mind because this guy was basically a conspiracy theorist. Now, he was talking to me about how the United States government is well aware that there is a cure for cancer. Like, he was telling me, like, there are clinics in Mexico where you could get this mystical medicine that, can immediately remove cancer, but the United States government, they don't want you to know about it because the United States government, wants to, suck money out of people through cancer treatments, and my thought process is like, I'm pretty sure if there was a cure for cancer, like the scientific community would have known about it. Like, I don't know how corrupt the medical system is. Like, maybe somebody will inform me about it. But I imagine, like, if some scientist out there gets the cure for cancer, they're gonna brag about it. They're gonna, they're gonna get the fame. They're gonna get the glory. They're gonna bring it all to the world. But the guy's like, no, you don't understand. There's this conspiracy, and I'm just like, you don't want to piss him off, so you just like kind of like nod as like, yeah, okay,
Sure.
kind of getting weird out. And the guy, he just takes a piece of paper. He's like, here, he just writes down the formula for the cure for cancer. And then he just like, here, take it, take the formula, you'll be that kind of thing. And then he just kind of like, orders and then walks off. I didn't keep the formula because here's my thing, okay? And this is the part that, conspiracy theories on some level, like, you have some, they have some kernel of truth or like something about them, but sometimes you get some conspiracy theories that are just kind of out there. Like, there's parts of them that don't make sense. Like, for example, why give me, if you have the cure for cancer, why give me, of all people, the cure for cancer? I'm just a guy working behind a register, You're not going to try to, make some YouTube channel, or you're not going to make a podcast or something like that with the squeaky microphones. Like, why just give it to some random dude, But I basically lost the paper, because I didn't really take it that seriously. And, because, again, if you have the cure for cancer, why would you just give it to some random person? You should be broadcasting it to the world, that there's this corruption going on or something like that, Why just give some random person that?
Well, I'll remember that if I get cancer. I'll look at you and say, you could have cured me.
You just like to blame me for everything.
No, I don't blame you for everything.
You just like to do the boomer tradition of just blaming the younger generation for how cruddy things are. It's like, you damn kids, you promised us flying cars. What was wrong with you? You got your YouTubes and your iPhones.
Well, I didn't promise you flying cars, but that's all. And no, that's our little standing joke that if you take a look at, like, from other movies, like, again, Back to the Future, whatever, by this time we're supposed to have flying cars. I mean, and what do we got to show for our advances in science? A cell phone. Oh, excuse me, a smartphone. Yeah. With everybody's face in there.
So,
well, I know.
Going back to
the story.
Oops, sorry.
There was one other story I was going to say. When I worked at the gas station, that was kind of fun because it was a Sunday morning, and I was sitting there, and you could hear the rumbling and thunder of a group of Harley bikers going through town. Well, our gas station was the only place that served premium gas, which you needed to use in these Harleys. Okay. So the Harleys would come in and stuff. And if you understand people with their Harleys, they don't like anybody else touching their motorcycles. But you had to pump the gas.
I mean,
and you did not
want to.
That's true. Yeah, but you did not want to get any gas on their gas tanks because that's painted surface. And so what I would do is, I would go get a pocket full of clean rags, and I'd walk up to the guys, and they give me the evil eye and says, I'm going to hand you the nozzle. Here's a clean rag. You fill it up. The guy's like, that's great. So I'd let them fill their own motorcycles up, even though that was technically against the law in Oregon. I don't care. I would take the fine because I didn't want to mess with these guys.
Well, I mean, like, oh, God, like, I mean, we have, like, you hear stories about, like, biker gangs, obviously you're not gonna pick a fight with guys in big, big leather jackets, that kind of thing, so obviously, customer first kind of thing,
Oh, they loved it because I respected their bikes. I had clean rags. I had everything, because even they were going to spill gas on the gas tank. But I had it such that you put the rag just kind of on the nozzle, you get it to the tank. You put it in, you fill it up, and then you give me the rag, and then the next motorcycle will come up and have a clean rag for them. So, and even if they spill a little bit, they were able to wipe it off immediately.
I mean, let's be real. Like, for these guys, motorcycles are like their babies. I'm sure if they could, they would bring them in the house. They would tuck him into bed. They would read him a bedtime story. The little motorcycle that could.
But I learned that mainly is to respect, when people came in with different vehicles and all that, is you respected their cars. Because some people don't care. Some people really care. But you're not going to know until something gets screwed up. So you treat them all, that they all care. And so you make sure that they treat their babies good. And you don't have any problems. But
yeah, true. I mean, yeah, but you always got to do that, crazy, going that extra mile for the customer, and you could get some, rewards out of it. Case in point, while I was working at Culver's, you're not allowed to accept tips from people. That's sort of the rule. Like, I remember at the end of my job at Culver's, when COVID hit, people were offering, like tips, it's like say, thank you for working during COVID, which, was another, song and dance, like it was just hitting, the United States and things were changing rapidly, things, businesses were shutting down, but, there were certain businesses that were kept open because we were essential workers, and I'm shocked that, out of all the things, fast food was considered essential workers, but, okay, I won't fight with the government on that, I'll accept the money in my pocket.
yeah,
So, at least I was honest, because I remember one customer, came in, it's like he was ordering his food, that sort of thing, and he, like he realizes like, dang it, because the thing about it is that we only allowed drive-thrus, at that point. No one was allowed to go into the lobby, and, it's like, well, I'll just have to go through the drive-thru again. I didn't want to do that to him because, like, it could take a while to get through the drive-thrus, so, like, I think it's like, oh god, I would say like maybe half an hour. Like, these drive-thrus were really long back then. I think they still kind of are, but they could be really long. So I'm like, let me get my manager, we'll get the order for you, we'll have it rang back for you. We won't force you to go through the whole system again. And I remember the guys like, thank you, for doing that. That really helped me and gave me $5 tip, And I remember, like, the company policy was that if we got tips, we would have to put it in, like, the tip jar for the company. I know some people are just like, you should have just pocketed the money, but I at least wanted to be honest. I wanted to be a good boy and, help the company. Because, to be fair, I was and still am good friends with, I haven't talked to her in a while, but I'm still, I was on good terms with the owner of the Culver's, and I was worried that, with how COVID was going, that she would go under, and, I didn't want her to lose her pride and joy kind of thing, you know what I mean?
oh yeah.
Because a lot of businesses got hit bad with COVID, like, I remember hearing my favorite water park ever, shut down because Corona came around, and, they had to shut down the business, and, sorry about that. They had to shut down the business, and, they weren't able to make any money, and, once COVID was lifted, the business just didn't come back, and I'm just like, no!
What place is that?
I think it was that, water park, the one in, Cedar Creek?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that one up.
Yeah, that one shut down, and it shut down, unfortunately. It's like, no!
Yeah. Well, I know that the Corona, COVID really was and there's your conspiracy if you want to find something about the pharmaceutical companies. I have a feeling somebody's going to find out years from now just how a lot of things were not understood about COVID and how they had to do things was maybe not the best approach. But I know another thing from my interesting portfolio of work stories was first actual full-time position I had after college. I was a engineer at a packaging company, and the packaging company, we were building a machine that packaged candy bars. So we got the machine all done, but we had to test it. And I didn't want to run down the grocery store and buy a bunch of candy bars to put it in, so I called the company up and talked with the engineer I was working there, and I said, hey, is there any chance you can send me up like a box of chocolate bars. It was for Nestle's. And he said, yeah,
Okay.
I'll get that to you. And then 2 days later, I get a call from our shipping dock and say, hey, Bill, there's a pallet here for you. You want to come out here? So I went out to the receiving dock, and there was a pallet of chocolate bars. Not a box, a full pallet. There were thousands of chocolate. So I called up the guy and I said, hey, I think you made a mistake. We got a pallet of chocolate bars here. And the guy said, either a box or a case, it really didn't matter. And I thought you guys would like to enjoy some chocolate bars, so enjoy. So
Oh, heck yeah.
I took my one box that I needed for testing, and everybody in the facility got a good sized box of chocolate bars from Nestle's. It was quite a treat.
I mean, heck yeah. I mean, like, that's the nice thing about working for certain companies, like, you get a good company when, like, obviously, people, like, judge on different, like, what kind of freebies you get, from a certain company. And I've gotten a lot of freebies over the years. I got, like, different tumbler, like, I think I got, like, a mug for one company that I worked for, for I could drink coffee from. I remember getting a bunch of Culver's memorabilia, which I still have. I think I have one of my glasses at home, which it's a very nice glass. I had from Culver's, although Daddysquatch, I don't want to say he stole it, but he just borrowed it and has yet to give it back to me. I'm sure
we'll do that with my lunchbox I got from one of my companies I worked at, and it disappeared.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we're even, kind of thing.
Oh, I might say a few more things.
Yeah. So I'm sure we're keeping tallies, So obviously, you have to go through that, customer first kind of thing, You got to go that extra mile, for the customer. Like, at any of your customer service jobs, Daddysquatch, did you ever have, like, a unruly customer?
Oh.
Like, somebody, you hear stories about, like, Karens abusing worker staff. Like, what was your, Karen story, quote unquote?
It'd be at the gas station or any job that you get a lot of people, they're not happy, and you don't know what prompted them, what did it, but they take it out on you because they can, because you can't really fight back and stuff. And the best thing to do is get the experience over as quick as possible and get them out of your sight, Yes, you're right, I'm an idiot. Yes, I'm stupid. Yes, I goofed up. Go ahead, the app manager's sitting right in there. So I was pumping gas and whatever, and the lady didn't like us. I went over, filled it. She only told me $10 not to fill it up, and it's like, and she didn't, but that she got all pissed off, and because back then I had put $20 of gas. Well, I didn't say 20. I said, you said to fill it up. I said, no, I said $10. And I said, well, the difference between $10 and fill it up was, you couldn't miss that and stuff. But, I only said $10. And she went in and slammed the car door, wham, pam, 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 at my manager's office. And I could see my manager seeing her coming, and he ducked. And he ducked out of his office and went to the bathroom. Where's the manager? He's running for some parts. And finally, it says, you reach in your pocket and say, here, I'll cover the other 10. Just give me $10. I don't know if I'm going to give you anything, Yeah, but
I mean, it's good to know that you worked for a manager where when things go south, he will throw you to the wolves.
Oh yeah, he threw me to the Karen. But another one was somebody wrote me a check and it bounced. And but during that time, there was a law that basically said that you could go out there and recover 3 times the value of the check, or $100, whichever is more. And so what I did was I sat there and I got the bounce check, found out the address, went to the people's house and stuff. But I had my older brother with me. Plus, I had another brother in the car, older brother. And I had my German Shepherd, and we went knocking at the door.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "You owe me money." And the guy was like, "I'll write you a check." I said, "No. I'm not going to fall for that in cash." And, he did. I just got the money he owed me and stuff, because otherwise it came out of my paycheck. And
That's fair. I mean,
but
it's nice to have family that you can rely on, that, that they can all gang together, as a cohesive unit and say, this is messed up. You got to pay my brother, the fair amount of money,
Well, that and the German Shepherd really helped. Tank.
Yes.
I love Tank. He was a great dog, but he just... and he didn't say it. He just sat next to me, but it was like... the guy gave me the money, and I think in today's environment, I wouldn't worry about it, mainly because you pull that stuff, they probably have a shotgun at your face as you open the door. So...
yeah. I mean, as far as, like, unruly sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, times are different.
Yeah. As far as unruly customers, let me tell you about the weirdest request that I've ever gotten from a customer. So, again, another story, like, another job that I would do is that I would run orders, back and forth from, the order station to the cars, which, I'm just going to say this right now, it can be pretty miserable because... the managers are like, run like the wind, and after a couple hours, you're pretty winded, pun entirely intended. But I remember running an order, late at night, and I remember that there were these, we were listening out in the distance, and could hear, like, two trucks, like, honking at each other. It's like, what the heck is going on? And they were basically honking at each other. We were kind of freaking out a little bit. So we go outside, and I'm kind of like taking the orders, like running the orders. And before I can run, one of the guys is like, hey, you want to make a little bit of money or something like that? Like, and I'm just like, what? He basically says, hey, can you tell that truck in front of me to go fuck himself? And I'm just like, you have to be the guy to politely but firmly say, no, I will not do that, because, it's not appropriate to swear at customers. It's like, I am sorry, but I can't do that. And the guy's like, the guy was at least understanding. He's like, you know what? That's fair. You have a good day. Like, he has this little smile on his face, but then just completely 180. He's like, hey, dude! Honks his horn. It's like, screw you! He's like flipping the bird. He's like, yeah! And I run back, I'm just going, listening to these guys honking each other. And I remember my manager's just like, what is going on? It's like, do not get involved, They get their orders. Thankfully, there was no fist fight, but yeah, they eventually went off. But I just remember that as, like, the weirdest thing that has ever happened. Like, I mean, what would you do in that situation? Like, would you just politely refrain, or would you see this as an opportunity to tell a customer to go F himself?
No,
I mean, I'd probably lose my job if I did.
You just get in there. You don't say a word. You just leave. And so let the managers do that. And yeah, people today, I'll tell you that road rage is. I mean, God, yeah, we used to, everybody back when I was there, flip off each other, but that was about the end. But versus today, they'll chase you down to your house and shoot you in your driveway if you flip them off. So
I remember seeing, like, a video, I think it was from, like, a subreddit called r/I'm a total piece of crap, where basically it's a doorbell video, like a door cam, of somebody in a car who apparently decided to follow somebody home, because he cut him off. And he follows this car just straight to his house, and he just like, you dare cut me off ever again, I'll fucking show you what for, that kind of thing. And he's just like yelling and screaming at him. It's just like, wow. So you stalked me down because I just happened to cut you off on the road. You just didn't let that go. You decided to follow me to my house. That is interesting. That's quite the road rage there.
Well, that's where,
I mean,
if you do something, you hear them honking, flipping you off, and you're trying to get to home, you never let them know where you live. You actually just go around in a circle around the block, go this way, go that way. Eventually, they're going to run out of time. They're going to take off. They're not going to fly. But if they follow you to your house, then they know where you live. So there's a tip from Daddysquatch. If you got somebody following you, go to the nearest police station. Don't go home.
I mean, yeah, that's a fair statement. So, like, obviously going on to the unruly customers, topic, I think, like, what was the one clientele where you're just like, oh, please, God, no?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
we had
every job has it.
We had one customer, and he was just, we had to have a weekly call with him, and he would just swear at us constantly. I mean, very unprofessional and stuff. And we're in a con call, myself and another engineer, and this guy was from California, and he was yelling and screaming, this, fuck this, and blah, blah, that, and that. And it's just like, what the, we hang up the call. Well, that was one of the divisions when we had one of their site corporate people there, and we went up to him because he was supporting us. And said, I said, hey, just to let you know, this guy's being a little unruly and stuff. And he said, well, he can't be that bad. I said, I know the guy. And he said, well, so the next week he was there, and we had him sit in on the phone call. Of course, engineer, he went into his tirade again. And the corporate person said, why don't you guys leave the room and I'll talk to him. And I guess he talked to him and whatever. Well, the next week, we're having the call and we're expecting the same thing. And the guy never showed. And the next week, the guy didn't show. And we're like, well, what's going on and stuff? Well, come to find out, unfortunately, that between the two meetings, the last one he had with that manager on there, he wasn't fired or anything, he was reprimanded, but a day later he had a heart attack and died.
Oh, God.
So
okay, I'll give you that. That's quite the twist. So I guess the man literally died from his own anger and rage?
Yeah, because, I mean, it was straight. Every time we're on the phone, the rage was horrible. I mean, I could see getting upset once in a while and maybe having to blur out a sentence or two, but man, the guy just had nothing but rage.
Yeah, like, I mean, you gotta be careful. Like, sometimes I would have, customers call me stupid, when I was working at Culver's. Customers call me this, customers call me that, and sometimes it's hard to, move on from that kind of thing. Like, I remember, this elderly couple that I was working, like, I was, like, delivering their order, and I was just like, I heard one of them, was, like, talking, and it's like, oh, do you need something? Because, like, Culver's teaches you to customer service. If somebody wants to have something, you would deliver it, that kind of thing, if they say, go in that extra mile. And apparently the elderly man literally just snaps and snaps. It's like, I wasn't talking to you. And it's like yelling. It's like, jeez. And it's like, man, what a fucking idiot that guy was. And it was just so out of, left field. And just like, I couldn't help but feel like, I didn't cry, but I just remember thinking to myself, it's like, it's hurtful. It's hard to handle something like that, where you get yelled like that.
Oh, I understand it, but sometimes, I won't say, in today's society, I think people, and here comes the boomer part, are a little too sensitive. If you raise your voice or you do something, and then they get all, oh, it's the end of the world and stuff. And when I did something stupid when I was a kid and stuff, I yelled out all the time, whether it's the manager or one of the senior workers, whatever. You do something stupid, and it wasn't, oh, well, Bill, let's go over here and coach you on how to do it properly. It was, you dumb mother, you screwed this up, get your head out of your, and figure out how to do it right, or I'm going to fire you, You get that, and you're like, okay, gotcha. Yes, sir. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay. Okay, boomer. I mean, we've all had those experiences. We've all, yeah, I mean, like, obviously times have changed, They want to make sure that, that their employee stays with them because, it's hard to get good help. They always say it's hard to get good help, with a position. And you obviously want to treat your customers, or sorry, not the customers, your employees with dignity. You don't want to be the person who gets like a bad review, because that's the nice thing about, the internet is that, people can rate their places of employment anonymously. I imagine that wasn't something you could do back in the day. You couldn't like, nowadays, you hear about like ratings on companies. You'd be like, 1 out of 5 stars. This company expects absolutely everything from you, but they won't give much back. Would not recommend. And you got to have that reputation.
Well,
you can't be that kind of person.
I'm not somebody that would probably go on. The only time I've ever complained to a company, really, that I actually literally called them up or emailed them directly, was some restaurant, and the restaurant had Sunday night all-you-could-eat chicken, dinner and stuff like that. So there was 6 of us having dinner, and they bring out the chicken. They brought out a platter of chicken, and then everybody had a piece of chicken. And I was like, "Oh, I could go for another piece of chicken. It's pretty good." I went to the waitress, "Go get some more chicken." She goes, "It's going to take about 40 or 50 minutes to cook some more." And I thought, "It's all you can eat." She goes, "Well, yeah, but it takes forever to cook it." So
yeah, I mean, like,
but what I did was I called or emailed the customer and said, "Hey, look, if you're going to have all you can eat chicken, then you better have all you can eat chicken. Otherwise, just put half a chicken or a quarter of a chicken for dinner and stuff. Because if you put all you can eat, your reputation," I said, "you really ruined our meal and stuff like that, because, I wanted more. I couldn't get more. And, that's why I bought that chicken. That's why I got that dinner. I could have gotten something else I've been happy with." And the owner, guess what he did? Changed his menu.
What did he do?
He changed his menu. There's no longer all you can eat chicken dinner. Now it's a half a chicken, a quarter chicken. He agreed. He said, "We can't keep up to demand for chicken." And I said, "Just throttle it back then." He did. And I've eaten there a couple of times since then. Very good meals. I just hate that kind of expectation you're going to get this and then you don't. But you get mad, but sometimes it's better to be a little, before you sit there and hit the keyboard and wham, 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 let it cool for a day or two and then say, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I mean, like, you got to be careful with, certain things. Like, oh God, I remember there was like this news story about like this place, I think it was called like the Starlight Motel or something like that. Like, people decided as like a joke to like spam the motel because apparently the motel shared the same name to the motel in this TV show called Steven Universe. So they decided to like as a joke to spam, like fake reviews, of like bad stuff that happened, which were things that happened in the episode. But the thing is that because they did that, people saw this as like, well, I don't want to go to that motel. Like, I think the motel actually suffered because of that. Like, I don't know if the motel, ended up going out of business, but it's like, man, that is just awful.
Yeah, well, you've made a good point there about companies, is that, companies, you want to be loyal to the company, but the company needs to be loyal to you too.
Loyalty is a two-way street.
Right, and here's how you vote. When you've tried to get change or you've tried to do things to improve your position, that you worked hard, and you legitimately can show people, this is what I've done, this is what I do, and you get to the point where it's like, yeah, just keep doing it, and you're like, well, how about, we'll give you a cost of living increase, and I'm like, geez, gas went up $2 a gallon, a 1 or 2% raise ain't going to cover my commuting costs to keep coming here and stuff. And you get to the point is that's how you vote, whether you want to be at the company or not. It is a boomer trend to have blind loyalty towards a company. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of us get burned out from that. You want work to be a decent experience. It's a 30-year life sitting at a company or doing a particular job. You want to be happy at doing it, or you want to be fulfilled doing it, not just doing it to A lot of people, they work and they turn their mind off and they walk in there, they do their job, they walk out. They don't care. It's kind of a bad way
It's
of
kind of
working.
like it's kind of like that quote from SpongeBob. It was like, "Let me explain how things work here. I order the food, you cook the food, and the customer gets the food. We do that for 40 years, and then we die." Does that sound good?
That's about right. And it's too bad because for every job I've worked at, you always try to find the goodness in it. And, we talk about the stories, some goofy things that happen, but most of the places I worked at, there's good people there, and there's bad people, and it's unfortunate is that you'll have 10 good people and one bad person, but you remember that bad person, and you don't remember the 10 good people.
Yeah, obviously every single job, that I've worked, I see what you're getting at. Like, they've all had, like, a good experience, like, I think each job had, like, something at it that, it's like, oh, yeah, this was really nice. I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to be friends with these people, that sort of thing. Like, that sort of thing. And you always have to have that sort of in the back of your mind, whether or not you'll have that good experience,
Yeah. I mean, my first professional job, the work content wasn't the best, but working with all the people and stuff was fun. I mean, we did stuff, at work, after work, we were always doing stuff together, whether it's, golf league or, volleyball league or, just something. We're a pretty tight-knit group of people, but then you leave and you want to have that with some other company. You find out that they don't do that. So, it's kind of tough. Sometimes it's best to insulate yourself from being too social at work because, as we've talked before, it's like dating somebody at work. You don't want to mess where you work because if the dating thing goes bad and you have a bad relationship, then it could be a toxic place to work.
Yeah, but it's always nice to have, like, those coworkers, that are, like, good friends, or they have, like, interesting stories. Like, there is one story that I do want you to share with us before the podcast ends. Like, I think, we're getting to the 1 hour point, so I think, to finish it off, we'll have, like, I'll give a coworker story, and you could give a coworker story, because you get to meet some interesting people, and there's one coworker story I want you to tell the audience, which you told me is, like, one of the sad things about my generation is that I would never get this story. This was about the guy, tell us about the guy who would keep to himself, and, would drink coffee, because you do have an interesting story for that guy.
Well, so I'm sitting here, and we each had our drafting station and all that stuff, and the guy sat in front of me. He was a smaller guy. His name was Bob, but he'd come in right on the money from work. He have his lunchbox, he have a thermos of coffee, and first thing he'd do is he'd get all settled in, sit there, pour himself a cup of coffee. He'd get to work. 10:30, he'd have another cup of coffee. 12 o'clock, he'd have lunch. 2:30, he'd finish off the last cup of coffee for the day. 4:30, he was gone. Every day. Okay. And I would try to talk to him and do this, and it'd be like, yeah, no, yes, quick, yeah. How's your weekend, Bob? Okay. And that's about it, So, and this went on for like 6 months. Well, the guy that I sat next to is Dave Steubenvall. He was a big flight enthusiast. So we're always talking about flying and stuff like that, Want to get this plane, got this, that. Oh, how about this? How about that? And we're just chatting always on that and stuff. But so I come into work one morning. I had my drafting table down, and Bob sat down, and then he plopped on my drafting table this big, huge leather book. And I opened it up. Well, he's pointed to open it. He opened it up, and it was a flight log. So Bob had been a pilot. And the thing is that you don't realize that when I was working, it was kind of towards the end of people that were in World War II working, that had come back from the war and stuff like this. But when I found out that Bob was a veteran pilot in World War II, and he flew B-17s in raids over Germany. And I'm reading the logbook, and it's telling me what missions he flew, what he did, and I was like, oh my, I'm looking. And if you looked at Bob, you would never think he was a combat pilot. And I was just like, I said, Bob, it's amazing. I said, can you give me one good story? And he said, Bill, over Germany, my biggest fear was if you ever look at the side of a B-17, the skin is just the thickness of a beer can. And he said, and I wanted to have a family. I really wanted to have kids. So my biggest thing was, because we were always getting stuff shot up, was basically have my balls shut off. It's like, okay.
So it was like that. So it's kind of like that scene from Heavy Metal where they're flying a B-17 bomber and they're getting shot at from different aircraft, and most of the men are just like straight up dead. That kind of thing. He was afraid of that.
He was afraid of
that. Which, to be fair,
but
it was a pretty intense war.
So what he did is he found this plate of steel, 3/4 inch plate, and he put it on his seat, and he sat on it. And the whole thing was he sat there so he didn't get his balls shot off. Well, one time they were taking off, and they're going down the runway, and the plane should have lifted in the air, and it took like an extra quarter of a runway, and he finally got up in the air, and he got up with the formation, but he said, Bill, I was doing everything to get that plane to keep flying and flying. He just said, we got to our target, we dropped our bombs, we headed back home. Finally, it started feeling better and stuff. By the time we got home, it flew okay, and he just was wondering. So they landed, taxied, but he crawled through the airplane to find out what was going on, what was wrong. Well, he found out that the other 12 guys didn't want to get their ball shot off either. They all had plates of steel. So the plane was grossly overloaded.
So, as far as like, that is a pretty, everyone and their mother had the same idea. And I think that's one of the nice things about, working, with people is you get to hear those stories. Like, you told me that you also worked with somebody who was at the Battle of the Bulge, and that he said something like, I think the quote you said was, your perspective on life changes when the Germans are throwing everything they got at you, and all you have to defend yourself is a machine gun.
Well, not quite that, but he just said, Bill, he said, life has a different thing, is that when you're shooting your machine gun, because he was a machine gunner in the army, so when you're shooting your machine gun and the Germans shoot back at you with their machine gun, and the guy was another Bob, but the guy was like, you would never figure from his mannerisms that he was, in combat infantry. Just was really quiet. He kept to himself and stuff like that. But then, I got to know him, and then he told me a story. One thing you'll find from veterans, they don't tell their stories very often. It's nothing they like to relive again. It was a bad part of their life, and I'll tell you, I give so much credit to those, the people that were in those situations. They weren't like, I hate to say it, the boomer generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs and stuff, where they say that's America's greatest generation. Yes, that was them. They were, get through the Depression, where there were no jobs, only to get thrown into the war, and then afterwards, and then they have plenty of jobs, but those who made it. But again,
it's like that Simpsons quote where I think it's like the grandpa from that show is like, where he's giving like a speech about how the elderly population is like, look guys, we survived the Depression, won a few wars, and we even put a man on the moon. The only mistake our generation made was making that generation.
Yes, that's true.
And
you can tell me one coworker story.
Yeah. So as far as coworkers, one coworker that I had who thankfully has like a generic name, his name was John. And the thing about it is that he used to live in New York City, which for those of you, I'm sure New York City is a place. Like, I remember watching a YouTube video of a guy, like a homeless guy washing himself in an inflatable pool in a subway. So it's a place. It's a very strange place. And I remember he told me this one story when he was living in New York. He was a paper boy, and I think he was like delivering papers in Brooklyn, which is one of the, main areas in New York. And he told me about this one, couple that he would deliver papers to, And, he would tell me that, come rain or shine, that he would stop, deliver their papers, they would, depending on the weather, be like, oh, why don't you come inside, and have a glass of lemonade, or, oh, why don't you come inside, and have a cup of hot chocolate, depending on the weather. And he's like, nah, I'm good, because obviously you don't want to go into somebody's house. And he basically told me that these people, like, they looked exactly like, oh god, the two, what was the name of those two, like, the man, the father and the mother from the Addams Family, like the husband and the wife. You know what I mean?
Natasha. I can't remember. I could just see him right now.
Yeah. But yeah, like, he said they looked exactly like them. Like, it was like a one-to-one kind of thing. And so, he was delivering papers one morning, and he saw, like, one, towards their house, and he saw, like, that there was, like, a police car at the area, and he's just like, okay, I'm kind of, curious, because they were kind of like the strange, weird, creepy couple, where, you're just like, that group of people who you keep away from, because you're pretty sure that they're going to do something and it's only a matter of time before the cops get called on them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he sees the police car and, out of the street, and he's like, okay, I'm curious what's going on. But then he sees an ambulance come in, and then he sees an animal control van come in, and it's like, what the heck is going on? Because, like, all these things. He sees the couple, they, are coming out of the house, they're both in handcuffs. So here's what happened. Apparently, this guy, he would work as a janitor. Like, the guy would work as, like, a janitor. Or, no. He didn't work as a janitor. He worked at a morgue. And he would basically clean the place up, that kind of thing, And one of the things is that he had a pet alligator. And this pet alligator of his, like, he would end up, like, taking human body parts and, like, trying to feed the alligator the human body parts to keep the alligator alive. That was the reason why they had to get the animal control van in there. So that way they could, just basically, because it's like, it's a pet alligator. Like, they had to, load it up and take the animal away, and they're just like, oh my god, like, he didn't think that it would have been that. For him, it was just, like, really shocking that something like that would have happened,
That he could have been the next meal.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm thankful I never went into their house, that I could have been their next meal, And that was always the experience he had, that would always stick with him in his paperboy route, that story. And I think that's, the nice thing about talking with coworkers, like, I would say to the audience, gauge whether or not the coworkers want to be left alone or if they're talkative, I say, if they're talkative, have some friendly conversations, if you're going to be working at a company, try to, make some friends with people, talk, exchange stories, because you never know who you're going to meet, whether it be a guy who came from New York City, who told me about the time that he met, the Addams Family with the alligator, or in, Daddysquatch's case, where you find World War II veterans, get some good stories, you never know who you're going to meet,
And who knows?
So I think that, yeah.
You'll be the old person one day at work, so get the stories, live them, tell them, share them.
Yes. Go out and live life.
Yeah.
So that is our episode on jobs. We kind of went over a little bit, but I think that overall this was a very good, story, talking about work stories. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed what you like to hear, we got other episodes on Spotify. We have other episodes on YouTube. If you guys like what you heard, give us a 5-star rating, or just, let us know how we're doing. We like to get as much, feedback as we can, because I think, like, we have, like, 1 5-star review, and that's it. Yeah, but just tell us if there's anything, that we could do better, or if there's any topics, suggest to us, You can do that through Spotify or through YouTube, and yeah. So, yeah, thank you again, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.